Welcome to ESVN, the Emma Sports Vigilant Network show. My name is Emma Vigilant, and you know what to do, folks. Subscribe, youtube.com/ESVN show. Put on push notifications so you know when we're going live. Rate us 5 stars on Spotify, on Apple. Like the stream if you're watching live or in post, and you can also comment. Let us know your thoughts. And then, as required by law, you must say hello to one Bradley Alsop.
Hello.
Hello, my friend. What a week in the NFL. Gotta say. No OT last week. It was Thanksgiving on Thursday. Thanks for boating, or I guess not boating with us. Is that the right way to say it? Bearing with us. Bearing with us.
Bearing.
Bearing is the right word. Thanks for although the Bears did not bear Matt Eberflus any longer.
They could not bear him for much longer.
Bear him for much longer. We'll get into that in a little bit. I don't know where I'm going with this, but Bradley, how was your Thanksgiving? We didn't really get to chat about that this morning.
It was nice. I went to just my wife's family's house. My wife's family's house. It was lovely.
That's very nice. And you saw Wicked?
So. I did see Wicked on it yesterday. I was quite riveted.
Yeah. I liked it too. I mean, there's so much freaking musical theater kid energy coming from that movie, but it's almost refreshing in their nearly cult-like earnestness.
Well, I think that's missed. I think that's been missed from some prior. I kind of miss a little bit of that. It's taking itself so seriously aspect of musicals, like we see in some of the ones from the 1960s, for example.
Right. I do appreciate that about the fact that this is so beloved as a musical. I know we're getting off track talking about musicals at the start of our sports show, but I also think there's earnestness in the sense that Wicked, at least for me, was the first musical I really related to, and it's because there are 2 women as the main characters.
Right. It's sort of about difference and kind of resisting.
Yes.
What could be seen as xenophobic oppression.
Oh, well,
yeah.
the undertones of it are
actually somewhat powerfully phrased story about the Wizard of Oz.
It's a feminist musical, which I think is really hard to find. I mean,
right.
I just growing up in the suburbs of New York, you're just my parents like musical theater and things like that, and God, I got to see Sunday in the Park with George, snooze fest. There's not a ton of musicals geared towards women, and I think Wicked was a modern musical that was about female friendship. I think that's part of why it resonates so much with so many people, and Idina Menzel and Kristen Chenoweth, just transcendent talents that changed the game forever.
No, it was great. I definitely... And
they were good. Arivo was, I thought, especially
she rocked.
Awesome.
She was great.
In that movie.
I was definitely defying gravity yesterday.
Mm-hmm.
In my seat.
Uh-huh.
Flying around the theater.
Okay.
That's all I wanted to say.
You're the first one that's made that joke, I think.
Yeah, I just wanted to plant my flag.
Okay. Anyway,
like a number of schools attempted to do this weekend in college football.
Yeah. So what was that? Fights in the NFL and fights all over college football.
Yes, there was an astonishing amount of rivalry-based violence in college football yesterday on Saturday.
So the Michigan Wolverines defeated Ohio State. I mean, Ohio State's record much better. This is not a loss that they should have had, and yet that's what happened. I mean, Wick Martindale had the OSU offense in fits. This is how things ended. Let's just play a little bit of this. This was a fight, a melee, if you will, on the field afterwards. And, this was in Columbus, this game. Just saying that because a bunch of Michigan players got maced in the face by cops who are clearly fans of Ohio State, or at least from that area. And that's extremely egregious. But this is what went down after the game where Michigan won. So for folks on the podcast, OSU's tearing down the Michigan flag as they attempt to plant it. Here we go. And the fight is about to break out. They're pushing a Michigan fan, I think, or either a fan or a member of the staff. And here it goes. This is the scrum. This is the fighting. But I guess that was the beginning. So there was a bit of that, and then again, as I mentioned, Michigan players maced by the police. There were, was there a fight when Texas planted the flare flag at A&M? I mean,
Well, I think there was fear of it happening because
of what went
of
down.
how much had transpired, and I think Texas coach Steve Sarkisian basically was like they were trying to do it, and he was like, no, to the locker room now.
And I'm forgetting where else, but there were a bunch of issues
There
with
was
flag planting.
Florida and Florida State, where the Florida State coach Mike Norvell, who was under tremendous amount of scrutiny because Florida State has been underperforming for the past 2 seasons, got so upset with Florida coach Billy Napier for allowing this that he actually took it upon himself to find the Florida flag and throw it on the ground.
It's really incredible. And then the other
UNC NC State was another one. There was a big melee there over over. I'm trying to, I actually don't remember who won that game, but I think it was NC State over UNC attempting to plant their flag, which led to a big dust up as well.
right.
And there was, I think, a potential for another one at Arizona State and Arizona, but that one seemed to fizzle out much more quickly than the other few.
But more than any of the fights, I just have to say, the thing that pissed me off the most in college football this weekend, which I'm now getting into in my, amateur scouting days as the Giants are 2-10, and I'm looking at Cam Ward, who I am starting to really fall in love with, but that's a whole nother situation. So Miami was up against Syracuse, and this was, as long as they won this game, they were going to the ACC championship game. Miami went up 21-0. Okay, but then it started to be a shootout. Syracuse, and you got to give them credit on offense, like Kyle McCord was really phenomenal in this game, but so was Cam Ward. They ended up losing to Syracuse 42-38. This was the worst coaching decision I've seen. Really, actually, there were 2 horrible ones. We'll get to Eberflus in quite a while.
Which was a fireable offense, we might add.
I am screaming at the and it ended up being the case. I'm screaming at the television. The Hurricanes drive all the way down the field. Cam Ward's brilliant. They are on 4th and goal at the 3. It's 3 minutes and 42 seconds left, and they are down by a touchdown, meaning they need a touchdown regardless. They kick a field goal to cut the lead by 4. Is Miami aware that a field goal is only 3 points, and so a second field goal wouldn't make the difference? They haven't been able to stop you all day, Syracuse. You're not going to go for it with that quarterback, with your team, on 4th down? Because, worst case scenario, guys, you don't get it. Then Syracuse has to take over at the 3 or the 4. And then you have more and more opportunities to stop them, because you know what you have to do? You've got to go score another touchdown, which was the same set of circumstances when you kicked that field goal with 3 minutes and 42 seconds to go. I have never in my life seen a dumber coaching decision than that. In my life. And, crazy.
Per the Sporting News here, University of Miami coach Mario Cristobal defended his decision post-game, saying it was outside the 10-yard line with 4 minutes to go.
It wasn't.
It was get the points and get a stop. It was a heavy go. They kept putting points on the board. It was a matter of us getting one more stop.
Okay, am I misremembering? Because I'm not I don't think that was the case.
Oh, it's saying Cristobal opted to kick a field goal from the Syracuse 10-yard line instead of going for a touchdown.
Okay, there may have been a penalty or something. I'm not exactly sure. Either way, I don't care.
Well, I don't. But even if that's the case, even if that's the case, I don't agree with if it was at the 10-yard line. I don't agree. Like, I still think when when it's very clear that neither defense is stopping the other team's offense, I don't agree with the idea of. It seems a little farcical to say it's just down to getting one more stop when by just looking at the scoreboard, it's clear that neither team was capable of getting one more stop. So I'd probably rather put it into the hands of my quarterback, who is most.
Okay, they're at the Syracuse 10. I don't care. Still.
Right. No, I even think there. I don't think it really matters, because in that circumstance, this wasn't a 13-10 game. I wouldn't be like, oh, I'm trusting my defense. Your defense has already given up near 40 points to begin
Right.
with. Like,
Right.
And you're not going to trust your quarterback who's probably going to go 1 or 2 in the draft next year
Yeah.
to get 10 yards for you after all that? After already getting you 38 or 30 plus points to begin with? Like,
It was astonishing.
that type of kind of like ingrained odd coach conservatism, especially in this day and age of football, like more modern football, I can't really understand when you could just either bleed some more clock by potentially converting, even if you don't get the touchdown immediately, or just putting more points on the board when clearly that's all that has been done in that game based on what the scoreboard was looking like.
Yeah, it was astonishing. Anyway, now to the professionals. I like watching players for the most part that get paid. We shall turn to week 13 in the NFL. Now, the Buffalo Bills last night in a picturesque, beautiful snow game.
Love a snow game.
Clinched the AFC East for the 5th consecutive year. Josh Allen, that's my MVP. And don't give me this Lamar Jackson crap. I know he's a 2-time MVP and he's one of my favorite players of all time, but we saw yesterday why he is not the MVP this year. Josh Allen became the first quarterback in the history of the NFL to throw for a touchdown, run for a touchdown, and catch a touchdown in the same game. Caught touchdown was basically stolen from the Chiefs playbook, where I forget who it was, but basically either the receiver or the runner was stopped, lateraled it basically almost backwards to almost a backwards pass to Josh Allen, who rushed it in for a touchdown.
Yeah, I think it was Amari Cooper, if I'm not mistaken. He basically just got wrapped up, and I didn't like, it was almost to the point where like, oh, I thought they'd call the play dead, and then just the presence of mind to run it to lateral it back to Allen, and give Allen a head full of steam, and you're probably not going to catch him. So it was an absolutely brilliant instinct by those two guys to make that happen, and for Allen to be credited with basically passing and then catching a touchdown to himself.
Josh Allen
basically being credited for both in the same play.
Josh Allen is at this point in his career where he's basically at Patrick Mahomes' level in terms of like how he's seen everything. He's able to react to anything. And I just saw this one, this play. Did you see where he rushed for a first down and it didn't look like he was going to get it? And they did a slow-mo of him reaching across the down, like the line to gain. And you see his head turn, like, and the camera's facing him. So you see his face turn to look at the marker, just like at the exact right time where he needs to, just to make it so that he gets over and gets the down and distance that he needs. And I just saw that in slow motion. I go, that's such a quick, instinctive decision where he is just like playing on another level. And he finally has assistance. And it's not like, Jamar Chase or A.J. Brown or Tyreek Hill or a top receiver in the league. He has the best offensive line outside of the Lions right now in the NFL. Like, they bullied the 49ers, bullied them. And it's a big part of why they were able to make plays in the passing game, because the 49ers essentially realized, like, hey, we need extra rushers. We need extra guys close to the line of scrimmage. And Josh Allen was able to pick them apart in the passing game because of that decision-making that I described. And then, what do you know? Say they back off of it, or it's a run-pass option. You have James Cook ripping off a massive run. I mean, he had it was like a 65-yard touchdown or something like that, where he showed off his speed because he was able to turn the corner. And it's just like, if they keep this up and the Chiefs lose another, because the Buffalo Bills have the tie break against them because they handed them their only loss of the year so far. Going through Buffalo in January, the whole AFC, that sounds really hard. And I'm rooting for the Bills. Bills Lions Super Bowl, for me at this point, it's like, could you get a more likable pair? That's what I'm hoping for. And then at the end of the day, we'll probably get Eagles Chiefs.
Right. But that's honestly how, like, that's how it seemed on the broadcast for a number of 49ers players, which would, to your point, would make it a big challenge, because there's some of the more adverse weather conditions I think to go in and play at in Buffalo, and especially with ones that they're completely accustomed to. Those guys where that's their home stadium. You saw Deebo Samuel trying to motion across the line and fall over because of how slippery it is. You saw guys on the 49ers front seven literally not able to fire out of their stance because it's so slippery. Like, it is not easy if you're not fully attuned / fully
used to it.
Yeah, if you just aren't accustomed to that type of terrain while you're playing, it's not easy. And especially even if it's not snowing that hard, even just the cold itself. I mean, he's a psychopath, obviously, but you saw freaking Mac Hollins walking into the stadium with no shoes on.
I know, I'm sick of that.
Yeah, these guys are nuts.
I like, what I was thinking about Mac Hollins, which I think you would find this funny. He is a poor man's Drake London, but a rich man's Gabe Davis.
Yeah, I think right. He's like the middle class.
Yeah, but of possession guys
of like high catch point possession
jump
receivers.
up and grab the ball.
Absolutely.
I find the walking on the frozen tundra stuff to be insane, but like I like to be barefoot too. But buddy, there's salt on the ground because of ice. Like, you're gonna hurt yourself.
But honestly, I will say though, overall, like, I was very impressed too because, it was clear, obviously, that the Niners were obviously, and as we saw, unfortunately, again, with Christian McCaffrey, there's a lot of attrition on both sides of the ball. And beyond just McCaffrey and Ayuk on the skill position players, I mean, two starting offensive linemen were out, Trent Williams and Aaron Banks, as well as...
McCaffrey out for the year.
Right.
Ayuk out for the year, obviously.
As well as multiple starters on defense as well. So, like, they were obviously, a bit of a battered unit, but at the same time... It's not really there aren't really very many slouching Niners defensive fronts, but like Allen seemingly made pretty easy work of them through the air, and then honestly, I was very impressed with some of the runs that James Cook shot off as well. He had some great blocking in front of him, and he was able to just kind of really shoot the gap and accelerate really quickly right in the kind of like the top of his run and just get going. So like this offense, when both kind of rushing and passing attacks are really clicking, combined with just a tough, well-coached Sean McDermott defense, is quite imposing, I think.
Yeah, and by the way, Sean McDermott is now 8-0 after their bye week. So that's another just notch in McDermott's column for a coach that has had issues but really has bounced back. And give credit to Joe Brady. I mean, he's been able to make the most out of this unit, and their offensive line playing the way that they do, as we've talked about with Shane Waldron, that has to do also with the offensive coordinator more broadly. It's not just the offensive line coach. It's about how you tie all those things together. It is sad what's happening to the 49ers, although they did go 1-3 since the MAGA picture with Nick Bosa, so I can't feel too poorly for them. I do feel badly.
We have to take our wins where we can get them in that context.
Look, Fred Warner was in and out. I mean, I know he left with cramps, but he's been banged up all year, playing through severe injury. Christian McCaffrey, he had a great start because he was actually ripping off some big runs, but even when he was playing in the game, it was the same old situation for the 49ers, who again, it looks like Brock Purdy's shoulder was really bothering him.
Right.
But they can't get it done in the red zone. They're kicking field goals all the time and then
not
missing
making
them.
All of them. I was gonna say, not making all of them too.
Right.
So it's like it's if you feel like you can be more reliant on special teams in that regard, like you need to actually like convert. And if you can't, it's kind of a losing battle.
And we'll talk about that with the Ravens in a bit.
Yeah, it's like failing attempts to get less points also.
Yes, and so the McCaffrey, it's horrible. It seemed honestly inevitable that he would get injured based on how they were managing his calves and his Achilles.
And it was tough to see because he basically just he took the snap basically, or the handoff, and then just kind of like wilted onto the field before heading to the tent. Like it was just. It's unfortunate just knowing how electrifying and how incredibly skilled this guy is, and just how struck by the injury bug he's been his entire career, outside of one and a half I would basically submit really excellent seasons when his health was completely with
Right.
him throughout the entire season in San Francisco.
So the Niners are fourth in the NFC West right now, which is kind of a crowded. I mean, they're all bunched together within this same, it's very similar win total. I mean, the Seahawks
it's
are
quite
now
close, yeah.
ahead in the division, but they play the Bears next week, and I don't know, given I might pick the Bears to win that game, given the Eberflus
Maybe
bump.
a little dead cat bounce for the Thomas Brown led Bears.
I'm ready to bury the. I mean, and also just some horrible news about Trent Williams, where he's
Yeah.
injured, but he just lost his newborn children. I think in this morning.
Oh,
So
I
he,
didn't see this.
yeah,
That's horrible.
I think it was an issue complication with the pregnancy. So he's going through a horrible personal situation. I don't want to assume. I don't know if that's the case, but it seems that way.
Yeah.
And so like it's just a nightmare season for these 49ers. And with Purdy still not right, I'm ready to kind of say it's over. I mean, and we'll see how they can come back from this because they're old and they've overpaid a lot of players. But speaking of the Ravens, I guess let's talk about the Eagles game. The Eagles have now won 8 straight and are cementing themselves as one of the, I would say, 3 best teams in the NFL, not just
This
on
team,
paper, but in results.
They are freaking dialed in right now. Like on both sides of the ball, they are just spitting fire.
I mean,
Like, it's
honestly, the
it's
defense won
crazy.
this game. The
Yeah.
defense, Saquon had a good game again, and he's in the conversation for MVP, but Vic Fangio held Baltimore to 6 of 15 on third down. They just continued to make life hell for Lamar, in particular, rushing their guys in the middle, where you're starting to see the priority on all of these defensive linemen and pass rushers and how elite they are on that unit. It's beginning to take over as it gets a little colder. This is when size starts to matter and teams are banged up and they're just making it so like nothing was easy for Lamar in that game. And the other thing that hurt them is that Justin Tucker may be cooked.
Well, and so we can. Well, of course we can. Well, I think that's one of the bigger, if not the biggest, kind of discussion point from the game. But I was extremely impressed, and not just impressed with the guys that I was sort of expecting to be impressed by, because Jalen Carter continues to be an absolute game wrecker. Was basically just
Totally.
throwing Tyler Linderbaum and Daniel Falele, who, by the way, Daniel Falele is like almost like 400 pounds, and Carter was moving him like he was basically like a stationary obstacle in front of him. He's like just an absolute athletic freak. Milton Williams, who's on a contract year for the Eagles. If you see, there are some metrics or some kind of there's some charting that basically just shows how, like, on a per snap basis, he's one of the most efficient rushers in the entire league. So that Eagles interior is just a bunch of absolute freaking dogs. And then the secondary, while missing a few players, Darius Slay didn't play this game. Out there was Rogers. What's his first name? What the hell is that guy's first? I don't remember his name. Rogers was the other cornerback there. And then Rogers and McCollum. There were 2 guys who were kind of in as reserves. Both had a few really huge plays, which I was not necessarily expecting from these guys. Isaiah Rogers. And but the ones I was most impressed by, outside of the guys kind of just coming in relief, because Darius Slay was out and Reed Blankenship was out with a concussion, so they were in relief and for corner and safety, was continued excellent play from Quinyon Mitchell, really like solidifying his place. It's not just like, oh, look at that good rookie corner. No, he's like a legit like cornerback period in the NFL.
Already a top 10 corner in the league.
And then it's hard to even fathom
Defensive
this
rookie of the year, I would say.
100, yeah, definitely, for sure in the running, if not the front runner, honestly. And then on the other side, speaking of rookies in the spine of that defense, I mean, it's astonishing, and I don't want to make this about race, but it's tough to see a white guy
corner, Cooper DeJean.
It's tough to see a white guy from Iowa just literally in completely and utterly textbook fashion lay down the boomstick on Derrick Henry, stop him dead in his tracks, and bring him down with like one of the most like perfect tackles I've ever seen.
I know.
Like, it was I mean, I thought he's an incredible player. He's an incredibly versatile player. He can really do so many things really, really well. But to be able to do that against like literally one of the best running backs in the league, who's been one of the best running backs in the league for like a decade, is insane as a rookie.
Yeah, it's really crazy, and I just think that the defense emerging in this way, and Fangio reminding us that, like, okay, just be a little patient. I'm still one of the best defensive minds in the league, and when I have these guys and the Jimmies and Joes, I can make something really happen.
Right, and another important thing that I think was very key to Fangio, and I think is kind of a big plus for a Fangio defense when everything is working, especially against a guy like Lamar, is like we've talked about this in a number of ways where like Lamar, interestingly enough, despite his athletic gifts, he actually like prefers to like really take his time in the pocket and really kind of like bounce around, go through all of his reads. Hopefully, even if it's a slight break contain, make the pass.
Right.
They were blanketing the routes so effectively, I think, and just sort of putting bodies in the zone of every receiver to the point where Lamar was like, "Oh crap, I can't keep waiting. Like I have to either
roll out.
I have to either roll out and throw on the run or just take off." And that's not, especially in kind of how the explosive passes in this Ravens offense have worked this season. It's not really what Lamar wants to be doing right now.
Well, no quarterback wants to have to roll out on a bootleg.
Right.
It's why, there's limits to, say, an Arthur Smith offense where a guy's not going to be patting the ball in the pocket and taking a big hit throwing downfield, because for people that, like, if you're rolling out to one side, the play is broken, and a lot of the times the players are moving to one side. You eliminate half the field.
Right. You can't
unless you're
decommit.
Mahomes going across,
Right.
and Lamar's done those kinds of plays, but it's still hard to do
Right.
that on a consistent basis.
It's hard to decommit from the role when it's going to be hard to go then all the way back across the other side of the field.
It felt like they just were able to really easily disrupt the interior of the offensive line to get him to roll out, and then they made him go laterally, and they had a scout on him to run
right.
in a way that I feel like some teams are starting to figure out. The Ravens are their offense has been faltering. And again, it's also about red zone defense, which the Eagles were very strong at in this game, even though the Ravens, once again, the Eagles have a slow start but still win the game. The Ravens started hot, but you can't keep kicking field goals, especially when Justin Tucker is playing like this.
Right, and then the other part of it being, besides, as you were saying, with the red zone aspect, like Avonte Maddox had an excellent pass breakup to it on a deep route on the left side. I don't remember who he's covering, but he had a really, really nice PBU there. But basically, as you're saying, Emma, like the problem, especially in a game that the deficit was 5 points.
Yeah.
And Tucker, if I'm not mistaken, missed 3 field goals.
He missed an extra point and 2 field goals, if
so
I'm
an extra
not
point
mistaken. It doesn't really matter. I mean,
but so basically more points.
And one of them was a garbage time touchdown
Right.
or garbage time score for the Eagles.
And more. So basically, regardless of the exact number of points, more or equal to or more than what it would take to tie or take the lead in this game.
Yeah.
It's not as if the Ravens defense really played all that poorly, given how much firepower the Eagles can throw at them. I mean, granted, Devontae Smith was not playing this game. However, which almost I think is a testament just obviously to how unbelievably talented this roster is front to back. But it is hard to keep going out there with the concern that this guy who, I mean, it's horror. I mean, it makes me, it's hard to watch the guy who is like literally not only just one of the best kickers of his generation, but I think just truly by the numbers, a guy on special teams who raises the ceiling of a team basically more than any other kicker has done in the last like 10, 12 years outside of like Adam Vinatieri, Steven Gostkowski, like. It's been a long time since a kicker has been as impactful to the success and failure of a team than Justin Tucker. And so wanting to keep putting him out there and seeing and hoping that the mojo comes back, I get it. But at some point, his output is literally the difference between winning and losing this game.
I mean, and Tucker's had some great kicks, but he had some of his haters have basically been said he's a volume merchant. Right, because they were settling for field goals more often during his heyday than other teams would.
Right.
So I'm not trying to say that that's
a
true,
fair point. Yeah,
but it could be something that's contributed to perhaps an overinflation of what he can provide. But with that said, the Ravens are still a good team. But right now, I have a tier list for like these teams that I think are going to win the Super Bowl or could win the Super Bowl. The best is I have the Lions, the Eagles, and the Bills are the ones that I think are just like the best 3 teams in the league right now.
You said, sorry, Lions.
Lions, Eagles, and Bills.
Yep.
Then I would say the Steelers, Packers, and Chiefs are the Steelers. I'm moving them to tier 2 in terms of Super Bowl contenders based on how they play. We'll get to that in a little bit. The Chiefs, you can't count them out in any way, even though I would say that was a horrible showing against the Raiders. And the Packers just have so much untapped potential, and they're hitting their stride at the right time. Then the Vikings, Texans, and Ravens I put in the third tier of dark horse at this point, Super Bowl contenders, because I don't see them beating any of the 6 teams I listed previously. So, the Ravens have problems. They could still get it together. And the Lions, look, they have a lot of injuries on defense. The Eagles on offense, I don't think they're very schematically that talented. And the Bills maybe aren't the Eagles on offense are schematically very simple. The Bills on defense maybe aren't that talented. And those are the holes you could poke in those 3 teams. But in terms of how they're playing, I think they're a cut above the rest at this point.
Yeah, and also even with the Lions, it's like so far, which this could always regress or revert to the mean, but so far a lot of the defensive either absences or reserves that they've had to bring in have not like completely been an Achilles heel for them yet.
Yeah.
So whereas honestly a little bit with the concern with the Ravens beyond some of the special teams concerns is also just like this run defense unfortunately has now been getting there's I think been a few instances where they've really been getting gashed on the ground. They've just not been able to contain the rushing attack. So like there are clear weaknesses I think that can be exploited with the Ravens that we obviously saw with the Eagles yesterday. And as you said, there are caveats, I think, for every team you can list, but I think it's really just about who in a one game sample has enough counters to whatever counters will be thrown their way.
And we saw that the Steelers do. I mean,
yes, definitely.
Just
definitely.
to move to basically why the Steelers are now fairly ahead in the AFC North race. I don't see how the Ravens can beat them essentially because now they're a game and a half back, and the Steelers are playing their best football I've seen them play in years. They're 9-3. They had 520 yards against that disgusting Bengals defense, which we'll get to.
Right, and the thing is, we've obviously talked a lot about how deficient this Bengals defense has been. But like, it's one thing to like beat them; it's another thing to like literally like kick their ass. And like, I think it's important that like the Steelers show like, oh, like we're not getting this many points from like pick sixes and strip sack fumbles.
Although that was the first.
Right, they got one.
No. The Bengals got the pick six the Bengals got the pick six to start the game off of the Wilson
one, yes.
With a questionable non-call on George Pickens falling down, but it didn't even matter. There were 48 points in between those 2 teams in the first half, including that pick six. But the Steelers were able to do whatever they wanted on defense or on offense against the Bengals. The Bengals have now lost 2 games with scoring 38 points or more. That's tied for most every team ever.
It actually makes me sick.
3 points by scoring when they scored on offense, 34 plus points, tied for most team ever. So again, including, we're just going down the tiers. This is a tweet. 4 losses when scoring 33 or more points, most by every team ever, and then 6 losses when scoring 25 or more points on offense. That's tied for any most team ever. This is a historically bad defense. So the Steelers looked phenomenal, 520 yards, Russell Wilson cooking, 414 yards and 3 touchdowns. I get it, but the Bengals defense and that collapse is a whole different story. However, I still think the Steelers look really good. Even with that high-scoring game, like the Steelers' defense still found a way to make a difference because even though it was a bit of a shootout for a while and the Bengals were up at one point, TJ Watt strip sacked Joe Burrow. Then Pittsburgh was able to take the lead off of that, and then it never really kind of stopped. They continued to wreak havoc on Joe Burrow. He turned the ball over again, and it was the end of that game. But like, even though the Bengals were able to do what they needed to do on offense, the difference makers on defense for the Steelers still were able to get things done for them.
Yeah, like with that strip sack, which led to Peyton Wilson scooping and scoring, and it's like it's incredible that those aren't even two of the guys. Like Nick Herbig, I think came in relief of Alex Highsmith, and Peyton Wilson is a rookie.
Yeah.
Like it's just amazing how much they're getting out of these guys, and whereas as you said, even though the Bengals were scoring pretty consistently, I mean, record be damned, Joe Burrow is still just going. Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase, like this Bengals offense, mostly just by virtue of Joe Burrow being Joe Burrow, is going to like put some points on the board. It still didn't necessarily feel as if there was much of a doubt that the Steelers were going to continue to like maintain the distance between them and the Bengals for the game, but it does serve again to like reiterate the point of like what a significant confluence of factors are leading to fail basically Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase in this moment, because they are still playing really, really, really incredible football within a very, very bad ecosystem.
Right. And so, I mean, we have an IMer pointing out, Sean from Maryland, saying that the Steelers will have the Chiefs, Eagles, and Ravens to play. I honestly don't see how they can win the division unless the Ravens completely collapse along with them. Russell Wilson isn't playing the Bengals defense every week, and the Ravens defense has been playing much better since their safety changes with Hamilton and Washington. And that is a fair point. But, and I will say the Ravens have a bye, and then they have the New York Giants, the Steelers, the Texans, and the Browns. They could win out, and they would end up being 11-5. But you would still need the Pittsburgh Steelers to falter at the end. And I just don't think we should count out Mike Tomlin at this point. I'm sorry. Their final 4 games are the Browns, Eagles, Ravens, Chiefs, or 5, because they, I guess, have already had they've already had their bye. So the Browns, the Eagles, the Ravens, the Chiefs, and the Bengals for the Pittsburgh Steelers. I mean, they're 9-3 at this point. It would have to come down to strength of schedule if they're both 11-5. Who ends up winning that division? Or no, it's 11 and God, not 11-5 anymore. And it would be 11-6. So the Ravens, if the Ravens win out,
they would
Giants,
be 12-5.
Steelers, they would be 12-5. Gotcha.
Right.
Yes. So I hear what you're saying, and the Ravens still have an opportunity, but I just think that I see fewer problems, honestly, on the Steelers football team. And poor Joe Burrow. That's all I have to say. It's so brutal.
It makes me so upset.
It's just ridiculous. The other, I guess, big game or big storyline coming out of this weekend will be Kirk Cousins. Kirk Cousins is not playing well right now. He threw 4 interceptions against the Chargers, including a pick 6 and another inexplicable pick in the end zone, where it's like he didn't have the arm strength to throw it away. So he's been playing better, but we're seeing still he's not the same. He's still not the same after that Achilles injury. He was underthrowing receivers. Balls were just not reaching guys with the velocity that they needed to. There were players open, you could see, but he would throw it and it would hit the dirt first because it didn't have the power to reach the player. Or he didn't have the power, it seemed like, to throw it out of the end zone, and that's what resulted in that red zone interception. And so it's sad to see, but you have to wonder whether or not this is just kind of like the end for him physically. Still makes 0 sense why they signed him to that contract, but at the very least, they have Michael Penix in the back, backing him up.
Right, and especially if it seems like this project is kind of running its course potentially. Yeah, I mean, I wonder if there will be any clamoring or any real movement towards it, only absent an injury, only because of the investment. Like, I'm sure some of the coaching staff, or maybe frankly even some of the players, I'm speculating, obviously. I'm just saying, like, I could see there being some opening towards a change only because, one, they're quote unquote leading their division. It's like the worst division in football.
Yeah, and the Bucks now are 6-6 as well.
Right.
The Falcons swept the Bucks, so they have a tiebreak.
Right.
But if the Falcons have no room for error if the Bucks get one game on them.
I guess I'm wondering if some people in that locker room might be thinking, do they see this as we think that, you know, 4 picks against a pretty good Chargers defense might not happen again, or do they think, you know, there's been a few games like this for Kirk. We have a guy waiting in the wings, and we are sort of still, even though it's a middling kind of mediocre division, we're still sort of fighting to maintain the division lead to ultimately receive a playoff berth. Like,
awkward.
Do we make the switch sooner rather than later? Even though, as you're saying, Emma, like, it's weird. It's obviously a weird situation that the front office and ownership put these guys in. But I would understand if there might be some scuttlebutt about it because of that.
It appears that there already is, and it's not. It would be, if he had one bad game, it would be different. But this has been kind of the trend for the past 3 weeks with the Falcons, and they're slipping.
And it's tough again which we said over and over again. There's just still. It's tough when you feel like some of this really excellent and high potential skill position talent is being squandered.
And
like
they could bench him, right? But they really don't have the ability to cut him next year.
Because of
his cap hit goes up.
Right.
He has a $40 million cap hit and a higher base salary by nearly double next year.
It'd be like a huge tax penalty, or, like, you know, dead money penalty on their sheet.
Right. And again, it's $100 million guaranteed, $90 million guaranteed at signing. And he's received a lot of that. But for the most part, they are stuck with him for 2 years until they can cut him and get and take on a $35 million dead cap. So the contract was insane.
And definitely, it's looking more and more like, especially, we'll see obviously how the rest of the season goes, but looking more and more like an albatross as we continue to discuss the parameters of it. But
we're just really quickly, we're realizing maybe what happened, which is that they signed him. They thought he was going to be great.
Right.
They saw him throw, and they said, "Oh shit,
we need a contingency.
Plan," and they fell in love with Michael Penix, but it doesn't absolve them of the stupidity of that contract in the first place.
Right.
Like,
and
functioning organizations don't do that kind of shit.
And the rationale behind the decision making at the time still is, like, kind of sticks in my craw a little bit, of being like, we're hoping that with what we've done with the team, we won't be back in that position to draft another quarterback. I'm like, okay, I think a lot of bad teams could probably go out there and say that and it not be true.
Yeah.
Like, you're not like, you don't have a crystal ball. Like, you can't prophesize that this is just immediately going to work because you signed Kirk Cousins with your good skill position players and decent offensive line and not struggle.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not saying, again, if anything, if the Cousins experiment continues to decline for the Falcons, good that they have Penix there, but it's just kind of crazy to be like, we're probably going to be too good to be drafting there in the first place, so we might as well take the guy anyways. Like, I think it's totally fine given what's happening to have Penix in relief, basically, but, like, that decision making doesn't seem to be holding water based on how they were rationalizing it after the draft.
Well, I agree with the decision in the end, right? I do think they're too talented to rely on being high up in the draft, or they would have done something wrong if that were the case. But the problem is that the process that got them there, Kirk Cousins once again took a team for a ride, and his agent deserves some sort of award. Because
that's probably his reward's probably like another boat.
They clearly tampered with him. Right, to get him from Minnesota. And they were so overexcited about that prospect that they didn't do their due diligence about his Achilles. And he took them for another team for a ride, and he will be one of the richest players in the history of the NFL because of it.
He'll be good.
I don't feel badly for him, but it is hard to see a guy kind of decline in front of your eyes. And again, the Chargers did nothing offensively to try to win that game. Herbert threw for 147 yards. So
right, like it was winnable. Besides, if there weren't
4 interceptions, including one for a pick six.
Yeah, like a massive pick six. Like,
so, like, the Chargers, I still really like them, but I don't necessarily think that this performance should give you even more confidence in them in the future. But
the inconsistencies of the offense, I think, are just still there.
Yeah.
I think if, like, as we were saying last week or the week before too, is like, it's good to see some overperformance, but it's clear that there's obviously still a talent deficit.
Yeah, and they play the Chiefs on Monday or Sunday Night Football.
We'll see how
week.
they measure up. Yeah,
we shall see. So went over that game. The Colts beat the Patriots in the game that was honestly really exciting.
Surprisingly so, yeah.
And Drake May outplayed Anthony Richardson the whole game until when it really mattered at the very end. But Drake May is exceeding all of my expectations with just a horrible supporting cast. He was 24 of 30 for 238 yards and a touchdown, and he rushed like a little maniac out there.
It's like pretty miraculous. Like this is a bad team.
A really bad team.
And he's doing a lot with like a lot
Mayo is doing the best that he
good
can.
for them. Seriously, good for them.
With what I would say top to bottom is the worst roster in the NFL. And I just think that Patriots fans have a lot to be excited about, given how Drake May is looking at such a young age with such little experience at the position, as we've discussed. But the Colts saved their season. They just saved it. And with the way that the damn Texans look right now, the Colts are still hanging around. They're not going to make it's division or bust for them, given what we're seeing in the wild card.
Yes, right.
Like the Chargers and the Broncos and all of that. But and God, what's the third wild card team in the AFC? Now that I'm thinking about it, who could it be?
Is it I'm trying to think if it's another AFC North team or
Dolphins. No,
Dolphins?
The Ravens. The Ravens.
Oh, it would be the Ravens.
Yeah. So I mean, there's a huge line of demarcation. It's the Ravens or the Steelers. Between those two to win the division, and one of them will be in the wild card.
Yes.
So
right.
And then the three AFC West teams, but like. The Colts have still a shot at the division based on this performance. And like Anthony Richardson, this is experience with him. He's not efficient basically the whole game until they have a final touchdown drive where they need it. And Shane Steichen did what the frickin' Miami Hurricanes should have done. I know they had less time, but with less than a minute left, Alec Pierce touchdown, and then Anthony Richardson runs it in.
Just demolishes guys going into the end zone.
Let's win the game here. That is exactly right. That is exactly right how they played it.
And I can't help it. He's so infectious. I love this guy.
Yeah, and
they were so excited to win that game.
So excited. Anthony Richardson running it in, just barreling through.
He just those guys could have had no shot.
And they got the 2-point conversion. They were able to win that game by a point. So not a ton to say except that was one of my favorite young QB matchups of the entire year this year. And both players, I think, showed promise and excitement in a way that is fun.
And I'm glad that there was this. I'm glad at least Richardson had this moment, because I feel like last week's game was frustrating, or the week before, which it might have been a week or two ago. But there was where it just seemed as if Richardson had been like. Don't get me wrong. He has some legit, like, sometimes either bad games or bad throws. But there are some times where I feel like he gets shortchanged a little bit by a throw being called back, or like a drop or something like that. Because the Colts receivers have had a bit of a drop issue throughout the season. But it's nice when everything connects for him, because when it does, it's pretty special to see just that combination of. Like raw talent, just arm talent, and his running ability, and also when he is actually able to layer some of these throws that aren't just complete bombs, which is like kind of funny that he's almost like the reverse in accuracy. Like he's very accurate down the field, but like a 10-yard check, you're like, why can't you just why are you dirting that one and not like a 55-yard throw? But it was nice to see him put that all together in a really impactful moment. And as you said, with such a it is, I think, there is nothing more. There's no more truer ring of confidence to show of confidence to me in a young quarterback than having a very, very bad supporting cast, and in spite of that, still doing stuff that is very impressive.
Yeah.
So it's like I love to see that with Drake May.
Yeah, love to see it, and love to see a comeback win. And the other comeback win of the afternoon that was we'll get to the Panthers-Bucks game in a bit. The Seahawks came back and defeated the New York Jets.
Oh, they did?
The Jets, once again,
What?
can run an offense in the first half and can't do shit in the rest of the game.
I would beat you in our picks thing if I just picked against the Jets every week.
I mean, well, you went 3-0, and that was when you picked against the Jets. So congratulations
That's a hack,
to you.
guys.
Although I went 3-0 the previous week, we're not going to keep.
Oh, no,
just
I went
want
3 that week, too.
Yeah. You went 2-1 that week.
Oh, sorry. When did I go to? I went.
You went
3.
2-1 and then 3-0. I went 3-0, and now I'm 1-1. We will see with the Browns Broncos tonight. However, but the Seahawks lost 2 fumbles in that game. They
surrendered a 99-yard kick return touchdown.
Although Leonard Williams got them back with
and then a big man touchdown.
Big man kick 6.
Yeah.
I mean, Leonard Williams, is his number 99 on
Former Jet also, by the way.
Yeah, well, I know his number is 99 on
and
Seattle.
Former Giant
He didn't get
also.
to keep the
He's a New York football legend.
Oh, and
Leonard
Julian
Williams.
Love is running all over the place, looking like a maniac, a phenomenal player in that defense. So the Giants just. I saw Sam from PFF, I forget his last name.
Sam Monson?
Yeah, tweeted that somehow this whole year feels like a troll for the New York Giants. I mean, Saquon is in the MVP, not just offensive player of the year, MVP conversation. Anyway,
and Leonard Williams and Julian Love are having career
balling.
years.
I mean, so is Xavier McKinney on the Packers.
Years. Yeah, exactly.
But anyway, Breece Hall was banged up. I was wondering what the hell was happening with him because he wasn't getting the ball enough. But part of it's also I wasn't sure if he's banged up or Aaron Rodgers just peppering Devontae Adams for no reason on short down and distance. What are your thoughts, Bradley?
Well, it's hard to even take anything. It's hard to even take any of the positives from when they were up 21-7. Because there's just no finishing ability, and also with this team, as we've talked about over and over, I would say it's like Groundhog Day, but it's not, because actually each successive loss keeps getting more embarrassing and humiliating. So there actually are gradations to it.
0 second half points by the Jets.
0 second half points, and if you'll see on one of these touchdown drives, I don't remember which one that touchdown drives for the Seahawks. I think it was an 8 or 9 play drive. 4 of those plays resulted in a Jets penalty. So almost either half or almost half resulted in a penalty. This is the most irresponsible, least disciplined team in the entire league. This team plays with zero respect for field position in the game. None. They play as if literally hundreds of yards in penalties won't matter to whether they're
oh my god, the penalties with them is also
every single week. It's a chunk play being called back by offensive holding or a false start. It's defensive holding giving their opponents better field position. It's an illegal formation. It's whatever literally any penalty under the sun. The Jets are trying to go for it like it's going out of style.
Yep.
It has literally gotten worse every week, and it's almost even more galling for them to have looked like their offense was running smoothly in the first half for the first time in 4 weeks, that Aaron Rodgers had a connection to Devontae Adams in the end zone, the entertaining Kenny Nwangwu 99-yard kick return touchdown, Rodgers getting a rookie involved in the offense. Davis, I think his last name is. I've not seen him play a whole lot, but and then at one point Garrett Wilson, because Garrett Wilson is one of those guys who plays well and has only played well under the worst of circumstances, jukes out his receiver in the end zone and has about 7 or 8 yards of reception of space and of separation in the end zone. Rodgers completely overthrows him. Can't make the catch when your arms don't operate like Inspector Gadget, and then throws a ball after 1.2 seconds because he's telegraphed his throw literally probably before the game and not realizing that Leonard Williams is athletic enough to drop back into coverage in the flat and take the ball 90 yards to the house. I would feel less embarrassed if they just lost 34-0.
Yeah. No.
Because at least I would just know from the beginning that they wouldn't have even tried to do something differently, or acted as if there was anything different, or as if there was going to be a different outcome come the second half.
It's just crazy because the Jets had so much go their way. First of all, do you want to guess where the Jets are in terms of penalties in the league this year?
Is it like a 70-year high?
Well, they are fifth worst in the league after Seattle.
I can't believe there are
Cleveland,
more teams that have more than them.
Baltimore, and Tennessee.
That's
I mean,
astonishing.
Baltimore is the other team that's been killed with penalties. I saw Bill Belichick was railing against them on the Manning cast last week. But yes, the Jets are one of the most penalized teams in the NFL, and yeah, it makes complete sense. It's just the Jets went up 14-0 because they were handed it to them, right?
And that's I guess that's the other thing too, is like, I think the reason I would also would have preferred a lot more lopsided outcome is like to lose a game where the Seahawks basically established every single special teams possession we are going to have is going to be a huge embarrassment.
Total disaster.
Like,
LaVisca Chenault basically almost gave it to them right in the red zone, but he ended up just recovering it, and then they were backed up.
Right, like multiple muffed punts, like multiple special teams errors. Like you were not only handed like ideal circumstances to win a game, you took them and provided yourself with what would be a cushion to literally any other team.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then everybody just decides, okay, I guess now that we won a singular half of a football game, we can just stop trying for the rest of it.
Yep, I guess that's basically it. And it's just really unfortunate. I wouldn't say that I feel better about the Seahawks after this game, even though they are leading the division. That brings me to talking about the Arizona Cardinals, because the Cardinals really kept that game close, and I thought that they would win that game. They ended up falling short a little bit. So congrats to the Vikings, because good job, Sam Darnold. He finally kind of, I think, turned the corner after a bit of a rough few weeks.
And he was having a pretty rough game, I feel like, before the fourth quarter almost, like kind of the middle of the third into the fourth, and then he was just lights out.
Part of why I still think they're more of a dark horse for the Super Bowl is because I think that, I don't know if I have confidence that he's going to be able to keep this up. We'll see.
Right.
He's a little too streaky, but the Cardinals are a game back from the Seahawks. The Seahawks beat them last week, but they play again in Arizona this upcoming week, which is sneakily a huge game, right? Because then they wouldn't give the Seahawks a complete tiebreak over the division and also a 2-game lead against them in the division. And with the 49ers falling apart, but also the Rams beat the Saints, and they're still in the thick of things.
Everyone's sticking around, basically.
Every
sort of the
win,
Niners, but everyone's really sticking around.
Yeah, and the Niners are technically not out of it. I feel pessimistic about them, but
same.
The Vikings are going to make the playoffs now. I mean, it's like amazing that their record is this good, and it's been mostly a defensive effort on that front. But the Cardinals and that Seahawks game, huge game next week that I hope they should flex that into another.
Yeah, right.
But the Justin Jefferson finally got going. He's been slumping these past few weeks. It's like they were almost, I think, noticing that defenses were game planning just against him, so they were going to other receivers, but they're not as good if they're not featuring him heavily. So he had a lot. I don't remember his final stat line, but 99 yards, 7 receptions. So that was good. And the Vikings were able to come back and win the game with a late field goal from Parker Romo.
Yeah, as a non-related Romo.
Yes, a non-related Romo.
It was interesting because Kyler sort of
No, it wasn't a field goal. I apologize. I forgot. It was Aaron Jones who finally
the 5-yard
stopped dropping things.
Right. The 5-yard passing, 5-yard catch and run that he had. Yeah, right. It was interesting because the Cardinals, I feel like they put together a few good drives. Kyler had a nice connection to Marvin Harrison Jr. in the end zone, and then it was sort of like the script flipped for where Darnold started to really kind of forge ahead, and Kyler was struggling. He had a bad intentional grounding. Like he was just, I think the Vikings were sort of starting to get to him more and successfully pressure him a little bit more. But I did think this was actually a pretty interesting matchup because despite the obvious talent deficit, the Cardinals defense definitely in the first half and into a little bit into the second were making things a little confusing for Darnold. You know, they were throwing at him, you know, a few kind of very intricately covered simulated pressures to sort of not for him to not really know when blitzers were coming or not, blanketing the receivers sort of toward like a kind of at the last second. And then in a few other looks, literally, they then basically they just were like, "Oh, you might think you might be seeing the simulated pressure look again. Actually, we're just going to send the house and have like a all out, you know, every off ball linebacker, every corner just coming straight in into the gaps to try to bludgeon Darnold." So it was nice. It was cool to see. I really like the Cardinals. I think. Similarly, a little bit to the Chargers, I think I just like the amount of effort they give on both ends of the ball and kind of like the amount of ingenuity they bring to it, despite the talent deficit. But I think it's good that the Vikings were able to win this game, so to not have like a bit of a big mark on the record, especially rounding into form of like, you know, the playoffs are coming, and the Vikings are definitely going to see more talented, more aggressive, more kind of beguiling defenses than the Cardinals.
And to stay ahead of the Packers, who on Thanksgiving won against the Dolphins. They looked like they were going to blow them out, but the Dolphins kind of came back into the game a little bit. But, you know, they still have a game to play against the Vikings in Minnesota. But the Vikings won in Green Bay, which gives them an advantage. Like, if, say, the Lions start to fall apart, you know, for all of our talk about the Lions' inevitability as like the one seed in the NFC, the Lions, they are struggling a little, as I mentioned, with injuries on defense. Like DJ Reader I'm not exactly sure. Well, they play the Lions next week. The Packers do. That'll be really interesting.
Right.
That'll be really interesting.
But yeah, as you're saying, you know, Aiden Hutchins is out for the season. Marcus Davenport's been out for a long time.
He may be back for the playoffs. Is the one little bright spot
that would
we
be
shall
huge.
see. I mean, Matt Milano, I don't know, we didn't mention it too much, but he was able to come back for the Bills.
And I think we thought that was a season ender, so that's very encouraging for the Bills, obviously.
I really don't have too many thoughts about the rest of these games. I'll just run through them really quick. We should talk about the Jaguars-Texans game. You know, Azeez Al-Shaair, it was a bad hit. I would say that it was seemingly more Lawrence's head hitting the ground that's, I think, put him out. But he's probably going to get suspended. I'm not going to defend that. It was just like he didn't change his momentum at all while rocketing towards him, and I think it was more his arm that hit him in the head, but the force of Lawrence's head hitting the turf was a really ugly scene, and he looked like he was definitely concussed, and so he'll probably get suspended. But the Texans are looking like shit, and I thought that Nico Collins coming back was going to change things, but they are limping to the playoffs, and whoever gets that 5 seed in the wild card is going to be licking their chops at the prospect of facing this Texans team that just doesn't have enough answers on offense. And CJ Stroud is getting chased down every play. Like Travon Walker was teeing up in this game, and it's not, they don't have enough going on. They have a lot of really solid players, but without a big bomb to Nico Collins, this offense doesn't have explosiveness. And
similarly, a little bit to Burrow is like Stroud is really doing basically everything that he can under like extreme duress to try and like will this offense to some points.
And I know statistically he doesn't look that good, but I still, if you think CJ Stroud is the problem, I've got another thing.
No, that
bridge to sell you.
You see, you know. It's been a number of weeks like this, but you see the running game is still essentially non-existent despite Joe Mixon being back. Like it's not been a consistent enough change of pace to actually kind of keep defenders honest and actually kind of take a little bit more pressure off Stroud and also give him a little bit more of like a give the defenses a need to sort of reset to not just assume Stroud's going to drop back every time when the run doesn't work, and the offensive line, which was it wasn't an incredible unit last year, but I think it was a decent enough unit even with a few injuries. These guys are just not communicating with each other, and it's clear that like there's a lack of cohesion in terms of like rule setting and like picking up coverages, picking up blitzes, picking up stunts. Like they seem basically as soon as the ball is snapped to become like very confused as to what they're seeing, and when that happens across the line, it's almost like Stroud's basically playing blind almost. It's basically like he has to sort of pick up every pressure because it doesn't seem like the guys in front of him are doing it.
Yeah, and they have their bye coming up. Maybe they can reset. They don't have an easy schedule for the next games that they have. They have the Dolphins, the Chiefs, the Ravens, and then the Titans. And the Titans beat them earlier this year. So it's not necessarily a shoo-in for them if the Colts are able to continue to play okay and win some of these games. I'm going to check what the Colts schedule is right now. The Colts have the Broncos, Titans, Giants, and Jaguars. The Broncos won't be easy, but that's a definitely easier schedule than what the Texans have going on. So they better get things fixed quickly in the bye week. The Rams beat the stupid Saints. I mean, Derek Carr can't stop dinking and dunking. Taysom Hill gets injured.
Yeah, I feel bad for him.
Poor
I think
guy,
he's out for the season.
Out for the season. But like for some reason, the Saints can't win unless Taysom Hill is playing. So I mean, it's crazy. Their record with him in it, they based way too much of their team identity around this guy for years. He's a good player, but Jesus Christ.
And he's getting a little bit older in age, get a little bit further up there in age, and he's a Swiss Army knife. So it's like you could plan a lot for him, but it's almost like jack of all trades type of thing, as opposed to having like a real cohesive identity outside of that.
Right. And here the Rams go. They are still within a game of Seattle in their division. And so if Kyron Williams can keep playing the way he played in this game, he was the biggest bright spot. Like he had over 100 yards. He scored a touchdown. He was really efficient on a bunch of runs. So the Rams still hanging around. They're always well coached. They've got Matthew Stafford. They've got those receivers. Do I think that they can make any real run? Absolutely not. But
no, it'd be more of like honestly a moral victory.
I'd be bummed
after
if
all the injuries they've sustained.
Of the teams in the NFC West, like I like the Rams a lot, but I don't want to see them in the playoffs. I would much rather see the Cardinals. The Cardinals are my team. I really do want to win the NFC West, so that's my bias at the end of the day. But the Seahawks, I'd be happy with too.
Yeah, agreed.
So not too much to say on that game. The Bucks and the Panthers. Now,
another surprisingly exciting game.
Good job, Dave Canales and Bryce Young.
Yeah, no, even though obviously they didn't end up taking the W. I don't really think it matters that much. It was just nice to see that A, Young could put together a few successful drives, and B, put together a drive to take the lead in the end of the fourth quarter.
Well, I'd be infuriated if I were a Panthers fan because Adam Thielen, I think, caught that touchdown pass that was overturned.
Right.
Or they said it was not, like they didn't have enough information to say that he got it. But regardless, Bryce Young looks like he can actually play in this league. Holy crap, Dave Canales again doing God's work on that front.
Yeah, he is a legit. I think we can say for sure now. If we continue to see a good string of the Bryce Young games and like that floor even increases like a level or two, like Canales I think is a big part of that.
And the big part of it also is in David Tepper's obsessive kind of freak out mode. He got something right in that, like, their interior offensive line is playing really well at this point in the season, and
they're
it
getting
keeps
some
him
real
protected. On the other side, that's not what's happening to Baker Mayfield, who is just getting beat to shit. And against this Derek Brown-less Panthers team,
you wouldn't expect it would really be
4 sacks on Baker, including one that took him out for a bit, and Kyle Trask had to come in. I guess he was getting checked for a concussion and cleared, and then he came back, but they kept hitting him over and over again. Without Bucky Irving, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers are screwed, and so he had Bucky is
legit. I think I'm very
poor Rashad White. He just doesn't have the juice, but
whereas Bucky has like all the juice.
Yes,
as in like he's just a really explosive mover, like both laterally and going forward. Like he is just a joy to watch. He just I feel like he gets more yards out of like runs where he has like no business getting more than like what he's sort of telegraphed. Like I feel like, for example, I feel like he gets like 3 yards for him goes for like 6 or 7. 7 yards goes for 10 or 12. Like he is always somehow, some way manufacturing more yards than you'd anticipate. I think he's really fun to watch. I can't believe he's a rookie. He's so much fun to watch.
Really, really fun to watch. So good to see for Carolina that there are at least
there's some movement.
There. And then lastly, for the games yesterday, the Commanders beat the Titans where they went up 28-0 so quickly.
Yeah,
because another special teams disaster class by the Titans, and Will Levis being Will Levis. But he actually played okay relative to some of his other past plays.
He had 2 nice touchdowns to Nick Westbrook-Akine.
I know, he's obsessed with Nick Westbrook-Akine.
That's his guy.
I know, not Calvin Ridley.
No,
Seth,
he's
very disgruntled.
He's like, I don't care about that guy.
Calvin Ridley. I traded for Calvin Ridley mid-season, and I'm just like not thrilled with the he's been okay. But anyway, yeah, I mean the Commanders, like the Titans had no shot after they went up 28-0.
They just wanted to let off some steam, I think.
Kind of.
After that loss last week, the Commanders were like, you know what?
Maybe they're getting their groove back, right? I still think the Eagles are going to run away with this division based on how they're playing. But the Commanders making the playoffs in this environment would be
huge for sure.
Huge benefit for them. I want to see who they have coming up on their schedule. This is the time of the year where we play this game. Okay, they play the Saints next week, and so they're going to win that because Taysom Hill isn't playing. Then they play the Eagles, then they play the Falcons and the Cowboys. Like, if they end up going 2-2 in that stretch, I mean...
Or even maybe 3-1, if possible.
3-1, but I'm saying, I think worst case scenario for them is they go 2-2.
Right.
Then they're 10-6, and I think
or 10-7.
Oh God, 10-7.
Right.
Yes, Jesus.
Which I think could potentially be...
That could be enough.
Yeah, there's definitely a chance it's enough.
That's definitely... Yeah. I think there's a... Like, in terms of the playoffs here, the unless the Bucks or the Cardinals win out or... Yeah. The Commanders beat the Cardinals earlier this year. So, they beat the Cardinals. I remember because it was one of my locks. So they'll have that.
Week 4, I think.
Right.
42-40. It was a big win. 42-14.
Right. But the Bucks do have a tiebreaker over the Commanders. So that's something interesting to watch. But if the Commanders can continue to keep this up, they'll be a really interesting team to watch in the postseason. And lastly, for some of these Thanksgiving games, look, I mean, the Giants, Drew Lock is obviously better than Tommy DeVito. So thanks a lot for that, John Mara, with your stupid bullshit to get Italian Americans to come to the fucking game. That's literally what it is. It also cost us a top 3 pick last year where we could have had Drake May, Jaden Daniels, or Caleb Williams in some circumstances. Probably not Caleb, but maybe one of Drake May and frickin' Jaden Daniels because of gabagool fucking Tommy DeVito all over the place.
Tommy DeVito is a hero in this house. End of story.
Yeah. So hate everything about that whole phenomenon. But yeah, I mean, look, Demarion Overshone had a pick 6. Good for them. The Cowboys have now won 3 straight. I continue to encourage them to win these meaningless games.
They should keep winning.
And they should probably just keep winning so that they keep Mike McCarthy around and give him a contract extension. That's something that I'm really advocating for.
People are saying this.
Cooper Rush is proving himself to be a decent backup quarterback. Turns out the gambit that Jerry Jones engaged in of trying to trade a 4th-round pick for Trey Lance to get contract leverage over Dak Prescott was bullshit. And yeah, keep losing, New York Giants. I'm desperate for you to get the number 1 overall pick in the draft. The Packers, as we talked a little about earlier, Jordan Love. Jaden Reed is the man, by the way. Jordan Love loves Jaden Reed, and I would love Jaden Reed as well if I were Jordan Love. I mean, the way that he can really accelerate like that, he's been a phenomenal red zone target. Jonnu Smith is suddenly like the most important player on the Miami offense, given how much he's being peppered. Like, good for Jonnu Smith, who's been a bit of a... I mean, he was on the Titans, then he was on the Patriots, and then he was on the Dolphins.
Yeah, so they've definitely been making good use of him as like...
over 100 yards.
Right, and sort of, I think making use of him in the best way that he should be utilized because of how athletic he is. That like kind of giving him some like short area quickness type stuff to do, especially in the red zone. But yeah, he's really been like a safety blanket type target for Tua the last few weeks.
And Tua has played well, and he even played okay in that Green Bay frigid kind of weather situation. So he had 365 yards passing, but it still wasn't enough. And I do think that the Dolphins are done from a playoff standpoint, given how strong those those three wild card teams that I mentioned earlier are: the Broncos, the Chargers, and the Ravens/Steelers. And I guess lastly, this is where we touch on Eberflus. We have come full circle to talk about this game. Oh my goodness. The Bears made the right decision firing him. We knew it was a matter of time. I had thought that it would last until the end of the year and then they would fire him. But once they got rid of their offensive coordinator, the Chicago Bears knew, I think, that Matt Eberflus was a dead man walking, but they could not avoid facing the way that Eberflus handed the final moments of that game on Thanksgiving, where like they had an extra timeout. They had a timeout that he did not call, and he let basically that they could have called to set up Santos for a field goal, which absolutely they could have, given if they were able to complete a pass and then, I don't know, get out of bounds. But I think that they were in his range arguably at the time of that play. They had a touchdown left, and it seemingly he just forgot about it. Eberflus did. So Caleb Williams passes the ball for an incompletion as the clock runs out. And then I saw in The Athletic that Jalen Johnson, who's a team captain, was like ripping into Eberflus in the locker room. Just, over and over again about why didn't you call a timeout? So what could the Bears have done? They fired him and they move on. They should have fired him before the season. I know it would have been hard to, given how the Bears performed defensively at the end of the year, but they should have had a clean break to give Caleb his guy to start the year. And now Caleb Williams' career is not starting in the way that it should have, but I do think that better things are coming for this team. Yeah,
and I think, as you said, it's just tough to almost be like, you could have removed yourself, you being the Bears, could have removed yourself from like kind of in coaching purgatory prior to a hard reset with a potentially franchise-altering quarterback, and now you're just sort of going to be doing the same thing until the season is over, instead of just pulling the ripcord in a way that you were basically doing right now in the middle of the season, just before any games were actually played.
Right.
So like it seems almost a little bit futile, but at the same time, like, you kind of have to, if you're going to even be a halfway serious organization, not brook like an absolutely like embarrassing, like humiliating clock management failure to actually win a game and then have like that coach who committed that blunder have the audacity to go out and say, I think we made the right choice to lose that game.
Yeah. Right. And then, he was kind of basically putting it on Caleb Williams for his decision.
Right, and then also like blaming, and sort of, in not so many words, blaming your rookie quarterback for it.
Right. The point, though, dude, is basically that you should have called the timeout immediately before that play to discuss it, because you had one in your back pocket. But with that said, that's really all I have to say about that. I don't know honestly, if I were Ben Johnson, I wouldn't want to go in the division. I wouldn't want to go. I would probably want to go to a market like, a big market. Say like New York, right? But with ownership that is a little bit more stable, than one of the other teams in New York. That's what I would encourage Ben Johnson to do.
I think you're talking about the volatility of the New York Giants ownership and front office.
I know. Can't even say it. Wellington rolling over in his grave. John, you're disappointed.
You idiot!
You're a disappointment to your father.
You let go of Saquon?
God, it's been 10 years since they fired Tom Coughlin.
That's crazy. That's wild to think
right,
about.
And then Ben McAdoo took over, and then there was the boat game, and then everything fell apart from there. But you remember that Tom Coughlin did not shake John Mara's hand when he gave a speech to... I'm sure you don't remember this because you're not a Giants fan, but
good for him. He stood on business.
honestly, Tom Coughlin, mean,
He's
two-time Super Bowl winning coach who
that is
won
a
it
salty
under
bastard.
Wellington, basically, and then John took over, and it was
Right.
a carryover for that. But like, he showed no respect for John Mara for that reason, and then they cut to Eli Manning crying in the audience, and it's just like brutal,
Oh,
brutal. But the organization has been cursed ever since they fired Tom Coughlin, and
If they fire Dable, that would be freaking awesome. But I agree with you. I think going in division in the NFC North would probably be a tough sell, in the sense of wanting to play guys who have kind of a lot of film on you, and but then other than that, like I don't know if I'd want to go to, like, if the Raiders fire Antonio Pierce, like I don't think I'd want to take that job.
you don't want to go to Jacksonville.
I don't. Yeah, right.
Rashad Khan.
Yeah,
Ew.
and Trent Baalke's still there. Like Tom Telesco's still there in Vegas. Like I don't know, or like New Orleans. I don't see a whole lot of like
And I'm not
excitement
somebody
in that job. Like,
yeah, like I'm not somebody that thinks Dable should 100% be out.
No,
You
no,
know,
but
I know
same here, yeah.
the record is horrible, but the circumstances have been bad, and I love the idea of a partnership between the head coach and the general manager.
right.
But yeah,
I think the last few weeks has been trending in the wrong direction in terms of
certainly.
like what's going on.
And if
but
they keep losing games, which they need to,
Right.
I could see John Mara getting pissed
it will
off.
be interesting though to see, because I can't imagine Johnson decides to go back to Detroit another year.
Right.
Regardless of what happens.
It would be his opportunity to cash in.
Right.
Anyway, with that said, we're going to read some IMs and get out of here. Bobby Western, you spell Coughlin with a capital G. Coughlin. Yeah. Sean from Maryland, I was watching that Bears game and rooting for them so hard. I've never screamed for another team's coach to be fired so intensely. It's completely messed up. Dave from Jamaica, what's up with all these fights? I don't know, maybe Mercury's in retrograde or something. Will from Indiana, hope you all had a wonderful Thanksgiving week. You should know that I got to shout out my Hoosiers. Even though Indiana played poorly against Ohio State, they capped the regular season with a 66-0 thrashing over the woeful Purdue Boilermakers,
Yeah.
which warms my heart.
Go
There
Hoosiers,
you go.
baby.
At 11-1, according to ESPN, they have a 99.1% chance to make the college football playoff, which ultimately means they'll get passed by multiple 3-loss SEC teams. Very nervous and excited to see what happens, but this season has been absolutely wonderful to witness. I guess it makes up for the Pacers sucking ass. Left is ESVN. Congrats, Will from Indiana. Kowalski from Nebraska said, I'm feeling pretty good about the $50 I put on the Chiefs and another $50 on the Lions I placed in the preseason for them to win the Super Bowl. I think that's a good pick. Tom Lowe Fink, Emma, if you like backwards passes, watch rugby. It's actually a foul to pass the ball forwards. You are trying to sell me very slowly on rugby. Maybe it's working. I was actually talking to my stepsister's partner, and they played rugby in college, and I was learning a little bit more about rugby over the weekend for that reason. Mind Pillow Guy says Toyotathon Jordan Love is here. Josh Jacobs looks unstoppable. The Packers' special teams and defense are finally firing on all cylinders. Winter is coming. We play in Detroit this Thursday, and it's time to make a statement. That is a hell of a Thursday night game. And the final IM of the day. Brendan from Kentucky. As a fan of college football, here are a few of my scouting prospects. Techia Roa McMillan as wide receiver out of Arizona. Sorry.
Ted McMillan, yeah.
He is... Oh, I didn't really watch ASU versus Arizona. But anyway, he's 6'5", 210 pounds, but he runs well routes as well as any slot guy. Barian Brown as a wide receiver out of Kentucky, 6'1". He's a speedy playmaker type in space. And James Pierce Jr., a defensive end out of Tennessee. He's lanky, 6'5", speed edge rusher, best pass rusher I've seen in a while, and he's athletic enough that he could play outside linebacker in a 3-4 scheme. Thank you, Brennan from Kentucky. That is useful. We'll be using more of your scouting resources in the coming weeks and months. And we will see you on Thursday with our locks. Root for me tonight. Please, please, Broncos win by a touchdown or more. No, please. All right. Bye.
Bye-bye.